Welcome back to Lessons for Life, and
Hi,
welcome
hi,
back, Seb Lopez.
hi, hi.
Thank you for joining me.
Yes, yes. How's it going?
Very well, very well. Joining us again from the States, and we're going artificial intelligence and creativity.
Mhm.
How creative can you be if you're using artificial intelligence?
I think the answer to that question is that you can be.
Well, we've just lost Seb Lopez.
Can you see me?
Are you still
I
there? I
think my
can hear
friend.
you, but I can't
Yeah, I
see
think my
you.
friend's trying to get in on the. Hold on. My friend just called me.
Okay,
He's
well,
trying to get
he
in on
needs
the
to click the
show.
link as usual. If anyone would, okay. If he clicks the link,
Mhm.
and as usual, if anyone wants to join this discussion, click the link, and you should be guided through a process whereby you will be through
Yeah,
to
I sent him
myself and Seb.
I sent him the link about 10 minutes ago, and I think that he should know to
Hmm.
click on it. I mean,
No problem.
I don't know. So
Hopefully,
yeah.
we'll sort it out.
Right.
That's the trouble. Artificial intelligence. People want everything to be done for them, but you still have to click the link. You still have to turn the robot on.
Right, right. Well, we'll see. I mean, either way, it's in the quantum worlds. This might be the best possibility. It's just a one interview person as opposed to two, or it's all speculation. It's random. It's serendipitous at the same time.
Whatever it, yeah,
Whatever happens is what has to happen.
whatever it's meant to be, it will be.
Right.
What's the quantum world?
To me, the quantum world, like
I've seen
quantum,
Quantum Leap.
yeah, quantum just means like allotment or like quantity of share of. So if we think of the quantum worlds, we
Okay.
just think of all the diverse branches that information can traverse and go in all these unpredictable patterns. It's like it's embedded in chaos. So the quantum worlds are infinite and infinite in diversity. It's very it's an
Do you
it's yeah.
do you believe in multiple realities?
Definitely. I think you can look in your own backyard, you can look at a single plant, you can look at a single particle, and it's embedded in infinities. So infinity is everywhere. It's just like in 1 square inch of table surface or plant matter. It's everywhere.
Is this the idea that every time you make a decision, the universe splits in two, and somewhere else there's a you that went the other way, that went left instead of right?
It's speculative, but there's some truth in that definitely. I think it's like it's we exist probably in infinite dimensions, and I think that just because we have one consensual reality, which is like which we denote as objective, doesn't is that objectivity is overrated, and consensual reality is massively overrated. We don't, you know, we just have this kind of singular perspective, which is very misleading.
What do you mean by consensual reality?
I mean, that's consensual reality to me is like, for example, if everyone decides, like the majority of people, the fashion magazines determine that Brad Pitt is the sexiest man alive, or whoever is currently. But that consensual reality when, or Nazi Germany, where everyone says that the Jews are bad and that they're the enemy of the state. All those people, a lot of them, they believe that lie, and they believe that interpretation of the facts, but they were vastly wrong. And so human beings, everything that we think about anything is vastly either wrong or incomplete. You know, whatever scientific laws people discovered 100 years ago, we've built and built and built and built upon them. So, you know, something is retained of that original idea, but then it gets complexified infinitely, with time.
Do you think morality will change infinitely?
Yes and no. I mean, I think that morality is morality is also a complex thing, and it's like I think that some things are just like constants. Like the principles of morality: treat others as you wish to be treated yourself. That's probably a constant. Empathy, but also empathy is like something that's so
Where
Empathy
do you get
itself is
your
a,
morality from, Seb? Where do you draw your
well,
morals
I
from?
try I try to be a moral person. I try to understand before I accuse, and I
Hmm.
think that's
Oh dear, I think we lost Seb.
turn
If
off the
anyone
phone.
else is there,
No, you
yeah, yeah.
there?
I don't know. Yeah, but we still
Can you hear
can't
me?
see you, but we can hear you. You were telling us that you
Yeah.
try to be a moral person, which is
I try to
commendable.
be a
There's
moral
a
person.
mm, mm.
Yeah, it's not easy because the thing is just like when we confront irrational behavior, what we perceive as irrational behavior, it's just it's hard to deal with that. It's like when people act irrationally and in our worldview they're wrong, then the tendency is to want to accuse them and make them the culprit. But the thing is that that discourse between good and evil, it's too basic, and it's created the mess that we're in the world today, where we accuse the other side of being evil, and maybe that's not the best way to go about it.
What's the difference between morality and virtue?
Morality and virtue. Like morality, moral comes from mores, which comes from habits, right? Like standards of behavior. I think that
Okay,
virtue is probably more transcendental, because virtue is like you're awesome at art, you're awesome at playing tennis or soccer, and it's like
but
it's a
those are
kind of
talents, aren't they? They're talents rather than virtues.
sorry.
Being good at
Hello.
something is being talented, but being virtuous is being honest, being kind, being truthful,
Well, I see
being
it kind of
brave.
like a being a, yeah. I see it as being like a
Mm,
virtuoso at life. Like there's
okay.
people who are very brain smart, like they have awesome knowledge of mathematics, or maybe they play the piano exceedingly well, but they're dumb for life. What if you could be virtuoso at life? Be emotionally intelligent to an exceeding degree, be fluid, like behaviorally fluid, mentally fluid, emotionally fluid. That's the supreme virtue. And we like it's not a professorial intelligence, it's a primordial, all pervasive intelligence. That's the virtuosity which I think is worth aspiring to.
And what does primordial mean?
Well, I like the way you use the word primordial. I think it's like it encompasses everything. It's like all encompassing, and it has it's original in the sense of it goes back to the origin. It goes back to the origin of what it means to be human, what it means to be a fully human being.
Primordial soup.
Yeah.
That's what we came out of, apparently, isn't it?
We came
All the
out of that.
potential for life was in
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
and it
yeah.
came out, and the fish walked out onto the land and then climbed the tree and then came out of the tree, and then
Right, right,
the apes lost their hair, and now here we are.
right,
Although some
right,
people
right.
don't believe in that, some people believe in Adam and Eve.
Yeah. Well, science is logical. You
Yeah,
can't argue too much with logic, right?
you can't beat science. It's been proven.
Science is incomplete, but scientific logic is very sound. It's very like you can't make a scientific you can't make a scientific case for racial superiority when you look at the
Can you not?
facts of science. I don't think so, because like what we know about the genome, the
Mm.
human genome, is like it's all very rational. It's very like it shows that the basic underlying principle of science is that everything is connected, that all
What about
information is in.
racial superiority under certain conditions and being adapted to a certain environment?
Under certain conditions and being adapted to. But you mean like a contextual superiority?
So, is the black person's skin not superior at protecting one from the harmful rays of the sun as compared with the lighter complected peoples of the world?
Yeah, but then like maybe African people aren't as adapted to living in cold climates, so it's like it's
Okay,
complementary,
so
right?
it,
Yeah.
it, it all it all evens out in the end, and every people or race have what they're good at, but that's not the same as saying, well, we're all the same.
Well, we share 99.9% of the human genome, the genetic code in common. So the degree of separation between ethnicities is very, very small. Like we're actually a lot more like each other than we think.
But we're
The
we're a
whole
lot like we're not a lot like a banana. We share like 70% of our DNA with a banana, apparently.
I like that. That's
Apparently,
that's
so
clever.
Bill
That's
Fence is
clever.
saying science is a religion. Well, it's a clever banana. What do you take from the evidence that different racial groups score differently in IQ tests, on average, for
That's
example?
meaningless. To
Apparently,
me, that's meaningless. That just means that like has nothing to do with the color of the skin. Has more to do with like upbringing, educational levels, nutritional levels of nutritional. Like in Africa, kids, a lot of them are starving. So those are just there's nothing to do with the color of the skin. There could be Einsteins in the Sudan who are never evolved beyond their nascent state of development because they didn't have the opportunity. So whatever.
hmm so there's a difference there, but you attribute it to environmental factors rather than something in the DNA. Culture,
Yeah,
Bill Fence is saying, maybe culture.
culture.
Um, so, what about the different, and I'm sure the same again, different levels of attainment within different sporting events? Certain races excel in certain events more so than others. That's because they've adapted to the climate of their ancestors, or whatever
Well, it's also like a cultural
factors
thing.
were.
Like, for instance, once upon a time, the Brazilians excelled in soccer, right? And
Mhm.
90s,
If you
I don't
just
know,
joined
like
us,
I
we've got
remember the,
Seb
the
Lopez on
Brazilians
the line.
won. Yeah, sorry. And so like the Brazilians
Mm.
excelled in soccer, maybe
No, that's
like,
right.
and then it's someone else, and there's turnovers, right? So like it depends on the generation or the context and time and place, but it's all completely.
Okay,
There's no reason why Chinese people couldn't be awesome at soccer too.
for sure. Could Chinese people be as awesome at 100-meter sprint as West Africans and Caribbeans?
My guess is yes. My guess is yes. Why not? And we also have to remember that nothing, like I said, nothing stays
Mm.
forever. It's always like usually like maybe
Mm.
there's one group of people who dominate a sport, but then like humanity evolves, and then other people start getting in on it, right? So now you
But
have. I
if
mean,
humanity evolves, that would suggest a genetic change.
I'm not saying maybe that. Well, yeah. I mean, we maybe there's we call it like epigenetics, but it's just like more like, for
Mm.
instance, now like with the with the globalization and like the ubiquitousness of all the art forms and sports. You have like breakdancing championships in Korea or Japan.
Okay.
Like many decades ago, that was probably less likely to be the case. But all that stuff exists.
Why do, for example, the Japanese and the Koreans excel at table tennis in the Olympics?
To me, it's kind of irrelevant. It's like why do Brazilians once upon a time excel in soccer? It just has to do with it's like a mixture of factors that combine together that spiral together. It's like
Mm.
why is it that some people are geniuses or considered geniuses? Why is it that we have like Teslas and Einsteins? It's because everything in their life, in their particular formation, came together and created like this petri dish where this particular life form was born. And they're no different than
But
us,
these people are
genetically the
one-off
same.
geniuses. These people are one-off geniuses, and there are one-off geniuses everywhere. But I'm looking for patterns, and when I see a pattern such as Japanese and Korean athletes excelling at table tennis, it makes me consider that there could be both cultural and genetic factors at play. And some people argue that these East Asians excel in that sport because they have on average, faster reaction time than people of other ethnicities and cultures.
Mm, Yeah, I mean, like, because genetics, like epigenetics and genetics interact. So, like, for instance, like if one culture is continuously making the same movements, then maybe it's like that in turn affects the genetics of those people. So it's like it kind of there's an interaction between external stimulus and like what's inherent to those people. So it like reinforces itself. But the same thing could start happening somewhere else. You could have the same patterns develop somewhere else because someone wills it to be that way. You know, like Chinese people are now trying to create their own Silicon Valley. Whereas the Americans had led the way in that area. But like Chinese people are very ambitious and they want to be the first to create the quantum computers, and they want to excel where they had previously lagged behind, right?
And why are they ambitious? Is that in their culture or is that in their DNA?
I think they have like Chinese people have like a kind of technical. They excel technically, like they're like really good at learning instruments, and they're very good at design. You know, it's part
And
of their
is that
culture.
it's cultural rather than genetic?
But the two like there's a feedback between those two things, right? It's like you can't separate the things. Like they're all like they're intertwined and they kind of like feed back on each other.
Hmm. Oh, Right Reaction in the chat is saying both, and it's great to have Right Reaction watching. Thank you. Bill Fence is saying it's to do with culture and location. For example, Europeans had farming and colder climates. Aboriginals lived in the bush and never built houses or farmed for tens of thousands of years. Okay, so look, we're building up towards the idea of artificial intelligence. Before we were able to come up with artificial intelligence, we had to grow our own intelligence, or we had to advance and become more intelligent. Do you accept that some cultures are more advanced than others and therefore more intelligent? Is that fair to say?
Yes and no. I mean, it's like, for instance, I think some cultures, like Western culture, has traditionally been more intellectual, right? More, but
Why?
the thing is, just it could be common.
Than whom?
Then say
Western
like
culture's been more intellectual than whom?
then cultures that were more physically oriented, that had to hunt and gather, and so. But the thing is, those other cultures may have had like a deeper connections to the unconscious, right? They may have been more connected to the sort of primordial mind, not been so much into articulating it into putting it into art and
Can we
like,
use the word primitive?
well, primitive
I mean,
has.
it's going to sound very offensive and it has negative connotations, and I'm not saying these people have a worse culture or a lesser culture. Maybe they're even better or more moral. But we're
Right.
about to hear from a good friend, and here he is. Welcome, Right Reaction. You're through to myself and Seb Lopez.
Hey, good evening, Julian. Salam alaikum. How are you?
Alaikum salam. I'm very well. Great to hear from you. Thank you.
I was just wandering by and I saw the title. I thought, ooh, clickbait for me.
Click maybe. Well, you're our target audience. Yeah. What
Who's
do you
the other
make of
chap?
what's been said so far? What's your
I only,
take on this?
I only caught so to be honest, is that the chap called Seth? Hello, Seth. My name's Ralph.
Yeah.
I only caught the other last 5, 10 minutes or something, but I mean, what I heard sounds reasonable. There's, genes and obviously genes and the environment interplay. I can't remember the word Seth uses, but epigenetic modifications are going to regulate your genes or your phenotype. So you get this kind of interaction between the environment and the genetics. And the analogy I always use is everything is like a seesaw. For every trait, you're going to have a certain percentage that's hereditary by the genes and a certain percentage that is by the environment. So then we can have large studies, GWAS studies, that call to correlate things like your political views. You can even surface figures for things like divorce and other high order social behaviors. And then you get this cross cultural thing, right? So, hey, what are the Chinese like versus the Zimbabweans? What are the Zimbabweans like versus the Icelandic people? And then I think it gets pretty end dimensional. So anyway, like I say, I just caught the last 5 minutes. So I have no idea what they.
No, brilliant.
Was.
Loving your contribution, and we've got the Kev Baker show watching. That's superb. So, Ralph, I'll just ask you a couple of questions. I mean, stay with us for as long as you want to or need to. But do you think that the differences are more genetic than cultural
I say, Julian, I think you've been.
or there's a
Yeah, I
bit of
think
both
you're.
on the right, and the right wingers. Go on.
I was like, Julian, you just really cut out. Perhaps it was me. I just like
So
half a second
I'm
was
just.
probably.
We were talking about the difference at certain abilities within the racial groups, and you're saying it's both cultural and genetic. Seb was tending to think it's completely cultural, and are you saying it's firmly in the middle, or is it 70% genetic?
Completely cultural. No, I couldn't possibly agree with that because we have plenty of genes that vary across even nation state levels, right? And we can surface high order models that correlate very efficiently, or correlate, I mean, sufficiently to demonstrate you could take nations and you can see correlates that apply across genetic well-known genes, for example. So my favorite is the 5-HTBLPR gene, which correlates individualism
Right.
versus collectivism. And if you plot the gene against the S allele, you see all the Anglosphere individualistic nations at the bottom. You see the highly collectivized nations like China at the top. And you see nations in the middle balancing individuality and collectivity or autonomy, like Japan, Israel, India. So you can see high order traits across. Obviously, when you get to nations and races and tribes, the data becomes obviously fuzzier. But I mean, to say that zero genes would be a very strong claim, right? I mean, I don't know if that's
So
substantiated.
you describe the Anglosphere as being quite independent, individual based, and China being what was it, collectivized, which would explain why they
China,
like communism.
yeah, China.
And what was
Taiwan.
the third section? The third
So
option
if you imagine like an X and Y graph, and if I put the S alleles percent of the S allele for the 5-HTBLR gene, it's very famous gene, you see at the bottom you see the Western European nations with England leading, and that's the most amount of individuality. Right at the top you see the collectivizing nations, so Korea, China, Taiwan. And in the middle, you see the ones that are balancing that between individuality and collectivism. You see nations like Japan, Israel, India. So you can see the Anglosphere, the Achilles heel, and the strength of things like the Anglosphere. Now, you could make weak arguments and claim that, oh, the Enlightenment only happened in Western Europe because they ultimately got the Reformation and Galileo, Kepler, and Martin Luther because they were individualists because of this gene. And then you can turn around and go say, well, that very same gene of individual liberalism is your Achilles heel because it gives you liberalism, allowing collectives to walk in all over you because you're a bunch of individuals, right? So, but those are very weak, spurious claims. But in terms of the genes, you can see certain strong correlates. And you see the same with things like, if you're familiar with moral foundation theory, and if you look at, all our morality is collapsible into 6 dimensions. If I look at that, I'll see strong correlates genetically between things like, say, morality in Korea versus the United States, right? Or Bernie Sanders versus Hillary Clinton. Right? You can see these kind of very, very interesting. But anyway, I'm just blabbering a bit.
We love it. I'll let Seb back in if he's got anything to react with.
Oh, is it Seb, not Seb? Apologies, sorry, man. I got your name wrong.
I think that there was that saying they used to say in the past, like East and West shall never meet, But I think that it would be amazing if they integrate all the different types of intelligence and genetic intelligence, or whatever you want to call it, just the intelligence of different cultural paradigms, and because each one has something unique to offer, and I think that's maybe where artificial. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I always think there's kind of 2 or 3 models, right? There's the model of the kind of extreme, or the further left, which says, hey, we have a kind of social justice worldview. And if I took that philosophy back downwards and said, if I applied it somehow, managed to wave a magic hand, gene cell therapy, whatever, I would get this kind of social justice. We all become the same man. Then there's the one in the middle to me that seems very kind of like the capitalist worldview. We'll just make the super genes, the best guys will rise to the top, whatever they are, and they'll get the steep pyramid. And then there's one, I represent the political, let's say, I've been accused of being slightly right of center, shall we say. So, on the right-hand side, you have the view that, no, maybe I want white guys to produce a peak. I want African guys to produce a peak. I want Indian guys to produce a peak. I'm going to have this kind of landscape with different types of peaks. Black guys will be really good at one thing. Chinese guys will be really good at another thing. And it's an apples and oranges situation. And, in the right, you'd call that human biodiversity, right? You'd say, hey, I want to keep them all kind of, being the leopard and the cheetah being the cheetah, right? So I think no one can control what happens, but I think that's the way I kind of crudely see it.
I believe in a kind of melting pot. I prefer a melting pot where everything
becomes the melting pot, yeah.
everything becomes so integrated, and we have like just be amazing to take the best from each cultural paradigm, from each culture, from each gene pool, and create like this kind of amazing new culture, like this kind of epi culture.
But would that be a melting pot? Would I strictly be the middle one where you're kind of saying you take the best of these Chinese characteristics with the Indian ones and the African ones, and you then end up with this kind of, if you like, a kind of what would I say, a melting pot of hierarchy, but you still then end up with a hierarchy, right? Like the
Why would
best
you
of
have
the
a
best.
hierarchy?
Well, because by definition, you keep taking the better of something, wherever better is some function, then there'll be something which is not as good in that measurement of that function, right? So if I take, for example, running quickly, or if I take swimming well, or if I take playing a violin, then by definition, if I take the best genes to play violins, not everyone would have the best same gene. Otherwise, it wouldn't be the best gene. By definition, I'd just say, hey, that violin player is really shit at football, and that football player, he can't play do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So when I get a hierarchy of really good football players, but they're crap at the violin. The people with the violin, they can't pass the ball. So I don't think you can have both of
But
them, right? I
I
think
think
either.
the general trend is toward integration. Like I was saying earlier in the interview, you have like I was watching a Japanese breakdancing championship the other day on the
Nice.
internet. So it's like I think more and more there's going to be this like spiraling of like intermingling of genetics and culture, and
Yeah.
that's kind of like even in the United States, there's the white the Caucasian contingent. Some of the Caucasian contingents are terrified the alt right that the white people are just going to become blended into the rest of the ethnicities like Hispanic and Black, and there's like
I,
the white race is dwindling. But I
I
don't
spend a
see
lot
it.
of time. I spend a lot of time deep within the alt right, so I know exactly what you mean. So
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
be
There's
amazing if
the fear of being bled out, for example, is a kind of a very crude fear, for example, because it kind of assumes somehow that there's a race to the bottom based on some racial preconception, right? As opposed to
right,
saying, hey, maybe some white guys could do with a bit of a, this is the alt right would hate me for this, but they could do with a bit of Asian genes here, a bit of Chinese genes here, a bit of Nigerian genes here, right? So that maybe you
right.
get something else out of it. But ultimately, I don't know what your views or what your background is, mate. But ultimately, it's a complex adaptive system. So we have very little predictive power, right? Unless we
Right.
have a totalitarian gene control and everyone is wired up in a kind of dystopic future, it's going to evolve into things we can't predict, right? Even I'm interested. My background is I'm a theoretic. I'm a computer scientist, so obviously the AI angle is very interesting to me because ultimately I think we are running into. Strictly speaking, I'm not just a computer scientist. Politically, I'm a kind of neo-reactionary. So I look at it, we're racing against Nick Land's vision. We're racing against, does anything human make it out of this alive? Are we eventually going
Right.
to integrate ourselves into our biology with increasing amount of intelligence amplification as opposed to AI? Plug in biocomputing, plug in some software into our cell levels, and can you even predict what that thing is that we will make? Can we make a post-human? Would we even know what the post-human consciousness felt like? Because by fundamental definition, we only have 10 to the 90 neurons. So if we integrated ourselves and made a bit of an Ubermensch, for lack of a better word, we would never really know that Ubermensch, right? It would have escaped us, right? It would have been a level of consciousness higher than us, right? Do you know
Well,
what I
that's
mean?
why. Yeah. I mean,
I don't get.
I look forward to like a symbiosis with the machines, like the symbiosis with the supercomputers. We would become like you're right. I think it's like the future if we manipulate technology correctly, we could use it to stand on the shoulders of giants and become supermen visionaries. We could become
Yeah, the Ubermensch kind of vision, but technical,
extremely
right?
intelligent
Yeah, the
and
technical Ubermensch. But then there's a crazy thing. I don't know if you're a sci-fi kind of guy, but when I was young, I mean, I read a lot of sci-fi, a lot more when I was a kid. And I tell you, have you ever read Ringworld by Niven?
no,
Uh,
no.
it's one of the most famous science fiction novels. And it's a crazy story. And the synopsis is you've got this advanced civilization, say about 100, 200 years in the post future, and they accidentally discover this inhabited star somewhere. So they pick the best of the planet, which ends up being a really smart guy, a really strong guy, a really good looking girl, a motley crew. And they go to this planet and they discover it's entirely been engineered with a ring around it. Imagine a little disc around the world, and it's uninhabited. And some super civilization has created this amazing piece of engineering they can't imagine. And eventually wander around this sparse, uninhabited place until they find a very primitive kind of almost like imagine like a blonde, kind of like a little like a tribe from the European plains. And then you realize that one of the creatures in this crew was a really dumb blonde. She's not a particle physicist. She's been chosen to go there. And the entire point of the universe The entire point of the universe was the two of them to meet and mate.
Wow.
It was like the next phase in
So yeah,
evolution.
so the question is, yeah, do you really need the smartest guy, or do you need this really dumb blonde who keeps tripping and shit, but nothing goes wrong for her? She's always fortunate. And somehow you then realize that the entire universe was just orchestrated to find this pure epigenetic mating between her and this creature. So you see, you can have a romantic spin in it, right? You can have a kind of, So I guess, are you in the States, man? Or you sound like you're in the wrong part of Yorkshire.
Oh, me, I'm in DC.
Ah, okay, hey, no, nobody's got a perfect life, man. That's
Yeah.
right.
Well, it's like I start living like my juices, my juices start to flow, my positive juices, my like creative juices start to flow, and I imagine the extent to which artificial intelligence could like take the human mind. I think that to me is extremely exciting. I think that the dream of intellectuals and artists across the ages, over the centuries, to exteriorize the imagination, to live in the imagination, is something that can finally, given 10, 15, 20, I don't know, 100 years, can like start to take
Next
hold of the
Tuesday,
planet.
next Tuesday. Yeah, I mean that somehow you feel that eventually your soul or mind can escape the vessel or the shell it is to become one with it. Yeah, and you know what? Hey, Indians and Buddhists would say they figured that shit out a long time ago. Right? They'll
That's
be like,
right. That's
you're
right.
just catching up with the fifth state of
That's
being,
right.
right? So,
Uh,
but guys, I have to bounce because I have an incoming
No problem.
hostile call from the alt right. Dude, I'm
Okay,
sorry, but
Ralph, thank you so much for joining
yeah, man. Sorry to have gate crashed a bit.
us, man. I
Yo,
Hey, take care,
wanted
man. Nice meeting you.
yeah, nice to meet you too. Thanks for the
Hey,
comments.
yeah, cheers.
to
Hello,
now
hello.
take him on
You
his
got
channel with all kinds of interesting stuff like that. But we've still got Seb and Omar X, I think, joined us. Are you there, Omar? Hear what he had to say about all of this. And that was quite an interesting viewpoint
hello.
for coming of this artificial intelligence. I'm still paranoid about it. I still think they might put a microchip in the vaccine and start downloading all our intelligence. Bill Fence is saying, has anyone heard the road and the ant hill theory? So when humans build a road, they do it over ant colonies without even thinking about it. AI could do the same thing to humans. Yeah, maybe we were just an insignificant speck to something with infinite intelligence. Infinite intelligence might not mean infinite compassion or morality. But we've still got Seb. You're still there.
I'm here.
Good man, good man. And Omar X, if you want to try again, come and join us. If not, just the two of us. Did you
Cool. Yeah.
disagree, Seb?
Yeah, I'm here. It's cutting out a bit.
Did you
I'm sorry.
find? That's right. Did you find anything uncomfortable about what our friend who explains that he's on very much the right side of politics had to say?
No, I mean it's just like we could talk about something else. We could just like go on from here. I
Yeah.
still have
Look,
plenty of,
lead it any way you want to go. I think we're going to do about 45 minutes. So you give
yeah. So like, for instance, I was
me
thinking is like
your next
the kinds of experiences that because
chat.
like there's a whole dark side. Yeah, there's a whole shady side to AI. That the future is like kind of unpredictable. Like these supercomputers, when they become so intelligent that they become autonomous and that they start making connections that we lose control, we lose sight of what they're doing, and they have their own ends and objectives. That's kind of scary, but on the other hand, it's like we could be just projecting our own shadiness, our own shade onto these computers, and like thinking that because we have a tendency to be selfish and evil that they would too. That might not be the best strategy. I prefer to focus on the positive side, on the gains of artificial intelligence.
Okay.
Imagine like in the future when we will be able to like have a headset, like some headphones that we put on, and then the music that we listen to will be the sensorial experience of this music will be so heightened and enhanced that you will be listening to music in hyper dimensions. Something that a sensory perception that has not been attained by very many mortals, even after 100 years of meditating. And like, this is the kind of thing I look forward to and I think would be so amazing, Not only that, but you could.
Well, do you think it's more than they've achieved through meditating? Ralph said the Buddhists are way ahead of you, mate. Some of them have reached samsara. They have escaped they've reached nirvana. They've escaped this eternal cycle of samsara and reincarnation, and they've reached enlightenment through meditation. And it's a spiritual experience that no amount of technology could ever replicate. But maybe you think it could.
I think technology is a shortcut. Technology is like, there's so many problems that we were saddled with in the previous ages. Like, for instance, like this AI guy was saying how, like, when you had a toothache back in the dark ages, like, that was it, man. Like, you had to suffer through that. Now you go to the dentist, you get it pulled out, right? So, for instance, there's just the possibilities. Think about, like, in order to make music nowadays, you still need like some kind of formal training. Think about how with like AI that you could like, there could be software programs that now enable you to transmit the music in your subconscious mind that's dancing there in your conscious mind, and basically take that music without notation, without formal training, and flesh it out into the real world as music that's based in sound. And not only that, but you could like also you could like take a photograph of like a forest or something, or capture a still of a photograph of a forest, and then synesthetically create a complement to that visual image with a corresponding soundtrack. So because all information is everywhere, what you're doing is you're fleshing out the sound and image, or the image and sound, and creating the synesthetic paradise of like the senses, which is amazing. That's better than Epcot Center. That's better than anything we've achieved till now. Like everything we have now is like so minute compared to what could come with the synthetic and AI, say synthetic intelligence.
But is it as good as, sniffing a flower in a field, or listening to the sound of the sea in a shell? That's not actually the sea. But can't we see the beauty in nature and in life already if we accept it? Bill Fence said music can already take you places. Are you not looking for a secular or non-spiritual answer to a spiritual question?
I think I like both. I like sniffing flowers and walking in the forest, but at the same time, I like listening to like really good ambient music, like Aphex Twin, or different artists that make ambient music with synthesizers. And that's, to me, that music is actually a mimesis of nature, which is actually more representative of it in some ways than instrumental music with guitars. And so I think that there can be like a full circle. We can. I think that synthetic intelligence and AI can take us into the inmost, maybe not the absolute inmost, but like a close approximation to the inmost essence of the phenomenal universe. It can bring us closer to nature. The word virtual means virtually like, almost identical, and it's like, so that's what I think.
Yeah. I wonder if virtual has anything to do with from another reality many trillions of years ago. And Munda Skeptical is saying it's deep stuff. They describe things like astral projection and whatnot. They mention that you will notice yourself attaining powers, but ignore them and continue to enlightenment. Yeah, that's what we're on here. The path to enlightenment with Seb Lopez, and he's not afraid to use technology or drugs, possibly. I don't know. But you said before you wouldn't.
I don't use.
If you wouldn't use drugs, why would you use technology? It's the same. You're just cheating.
Well,
it's a shortcut.
Technology is less extreme and more predictable than drugs. A person takes LSD, man, like anything can happen. You know, the person can like descend into like a very hellish state of, you know, a very claustrophobic state. Drugs like ketamine, LSD are just, they're not for everyone. It's like not everyone wants to jump out of an airplane, you know, even if it's with a parachute. Not everyone wants to like get catapulted into the unconscious by a substance, and, you know, with almost no predictability. Whereas like electronics technologies have settings, right? They have settings, and you can like graduate the approach, and you can gauge, you can control it, right? You can get out of it too if you want to. If a person takes LSD and they have a really hellish trip, they can't get out of it until it's over. They just have to wait, whatever, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours.
So you like the control aspect. Names policy is saying it's hubris to think you can achieve enlightenment without forming an alliance with nature, i.e. eating mushrooms. Yeah, mushrooms are natural. And give peace a chance of saying a computer bringing us closer to nature sounds far-fetched. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I mean, to me, computers have already brought me closer to nature, because, like I said, I like ambient music. Like, there's ambient music which is like has like extremely natural resonances.
Oh, and what does ambient mean?
You know, ambient music, like just think of some artists like Boards of Canada or Aphex Twin. Their music is.
I'm wondering what the word means, as in the French say ambiance. Is it the surroundings?
It could be music that's. It could be
the
music
mood.
That's, yeah, it sets a mood. It sets a mood. It sets a sort of a state that's. It's not like heavy dance music where there's like, you know, marked rhythms.
No,
Instead, it's
I love a chill out remix. Have you seen the
music
conspiracy theory about the wavelength, I think, at which music is now recorded? And at some point in history, they were all changed to some different wavelength that is really disturbing for your brain waves. And prior to that, it was not the case. And the universe resonates at the tone of that we listen to now, causing I want to say interference or dissonance within our brains. Have you come across that one, Seb?
I hadn't heard of that, honestly. I had not heard.
I'll look it up for you. At some point in history, someone, I don't know, patented or copyrighted the waves. I'm not giving a very good explanation of this, but the wavelength at which music is recorded at. Maybe someone in the comments knows the conspiracy theory that I'm talking about. Munda Skeptical is saying heard of it, but I don't know. Skeptical as usual. And Bill Fence is saying lucid dreaming. Yeah, we've talked about that before. I mean, they say if you want to control your dreams, you should regularly question whether or not you are dreaming and pinch yourself throughout the day so that you can do the same when you are dreaming. I mean, I often wonder, you know, seeing after death. How will I know it's real? And two,
it's cutting out. I'm sorry. Like, your image is freezing and I can't hear you. Hello?
Yeah, I mean, if there is any sentient experience after death, i.e., life after death, how will we know it's real and what is real?
Right.
Bill Fence is saying, yeah, that's with classical KM is saying 432. Is that the number? Is that the resonance? Is that the pitch that I'm talking about? And I remember someone showing a comparison of what the waves look like when you are listening to generic pop music, and they're all sort of wavy and chaotic and all over the place, as compared with some Quran had very fluid, peaceful waves that looked very sort of ordered, and
Right.
it was as if to say, "Oh, you know, look at that! Music is going to destroy your brain, but the Quran will calm you down." I'm not sure what you think about that, Seb.
No, I think like you can extract harmony from dissonance too. It's not always just that.
Can you?
Yeah, sometimes you need to like release. You need like a release of energy. I like dancing to beat heavy music.
Yeah.
It's not something I want to listen to all the time. You know, it's not something I want to listen to caress my
Is
inner
it
thoughts. But
a cathartic experience?
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you
we
think?
have a lot of. Go ahead. Sorry. Hello.
Go on.
No,
Different
you cut out for a
personality
second.
types gravitate towards different types of music.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and a lot of people like very sort of angry music, if I could put it that way.
Yeah, my dad's like a mathematician by training, so he likes music that's very structured and that has distinct melody patterns. Whereas like
Mhm.
I'm different. I like that too, but I also like music that's just purely vibrational, like vibey. It doesn't have a distinct melody. It's supposed to induce a state of like a vibratory kind of sensation of being out there in the beach. I like dance hall is my favorite music,
Yeah,
reggae dance hall, and it's like
she's
I
got
like
that vibe.
the vibiness, you know.
Mm.
But other people are
James
different,
Policy is
right?
saying,
So
I think binaural beats is quasi pseudoscience, not just pseudoscience, quasi pseudoscience. Binaural beats, when they put a different thing in each ear, and you're gonna what do they do? Binaural beats.
they're
They help
supposed
you
to like
lucid dream.
they're just like rhythms are supposed to calm you down. Like they're supposed to diminish
Okay.
depression. I did it for a while. It didn't work for me. Maybe it works for someone else.
Mm. Have a chamomile tea. That calms you down,
Me too.
apparently.
That's my mom always gives me chamomile tea.
Now, why does that not count as drugs if it calms
What
you
is
down?
chamomile tea? It's natural. It's
Seb
not a
likes a
compound. I think a
chamomile
natural
tea,
substance
apparently.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cannabis
but like
is
I don't know.
natural.
It's cannabis to me is too strong. It's like I know people who's like it may work better for some people than others, but I have people who start smoking it and they get anxious
Mm.
afterwards. It's less. It's a much stronger substance than drinking chamomile tea. You know, like harder to control.
Names Policy thought he deleted his comment. I'm going to put it on the screen for everyone. I think binaural beats is quasi pseudoscience. Sorry, Names Policy. I'm bullying you there. Um, that's all right. Yeah, I think a grey scale. And people often say, "I don't do drugs, I wouldn't touch them," but they drink alcohol. And then you've got people that don't drink who are very sort of high and mighty about it, say, "Oh, I would never drink," but alters your brain as well. So anything could be a drug. Names Policy is saying, what I meant was those YouTube videos that say, like, turbocharge your brain learning by listening to some certain frequency or something. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't believe anything that I saw on YouTube. And we all want a quick fix. We want a lucid dream. If I listen to this, the placebo is going to work, but make sure you got headphones in because they're binaural. So it's one thing going into the left ear, one thing going into the right. Yeah, you can't. There are no shortcuts, I think. If you want to achieve inner peace, the reason we live as long as we do is probably because that's how long it usually takes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just like consider yourself like
But
I know I'm 43
only
years
the good
old.
die young. Murder Skeptic was saying they call it wine. They say the brain stops growing at 40. So you have reached maturity, but only recently.
Why should the brain stop growing at 40? I know. What does that mean?
I heard that I heard that from someone.
Oh, okay.
Um,
I think my
but
brain's just
but
starting to grow. I'm like 43 years old.
yeah,
I think my brain is just beginning to like actually get somewhere now, like somewhere exciting with my thoughts.
and where's it going? What direction are we going in?
It's becoming more scientific, more well-rounded.
Yeah.
It took me like maybe like 15 years to develop a high degree of a modest degree or moderate degree of emotional intelligence. So I don't act out in childish and aggressive ways most of the time like I used to when I was younger. Not aggressive, but sort of I don't start arguments with people for no good reason. Not nearly as much as I used to.
Anymore.
And I'm just like a lot calmer, a lot more. I'm more self-assured. If I get into an emotional funk, I don't stay there for very long. And I think about the group dynamic. I think about the importance of the group dynamic, not just my own opinions. So the need to maintain peace in the group, that's a sign of maturity. My must mean that my prefrontal cortex has developed more.
Are you a member of a lot of groups?
I have friends in different places, like in Santiago, Chile. When I go there, I have my group of friends, and we hang out and we party a lot. We go dancing like 2-3 times a week, like till we just love dancing. It's just a big part of our ethos, our group mentality.
And is there a pecking order in the group? Is there an alpha male or female?
No. I'm proud to say that doesn't exist. Everyone just contributes their energy, and sometimes we get into arguments, and then there's no one who sets the tone for everyone else. I don't see that in our group of friends. We're very inclusive. We're constantly letting people in, more and more people into the group. So there's a constant influx of new people, and then there's like the core as well. It's very democratic, I think.
But we will get back to Seb Lopez. In the chat, Munda Skeptical saying you can do things to keep up neuroplasticity. In Jewish tradition, you only reach understanding at 40 years old. That's interesting. And according to the Islamic tradition, the Prophet received his revelation when he was 40 years old, but he was already in the habit of spending much time meditating and contemplating and thinking. And Bill Fencer saying that's when they study the Kabbalah. No, don't know about that. Yeah. Sorry, Seb, we lost you there briefly. But
right here.
Round it off for us. You don't have an alpha male in your group. You're all equal.
We're all equal.
And what about the workplace versus the social environment? Are you a different animal when you have to be professional versus when you're with your mates?
Well, my workplace is just basically writing books. So like I work from home, I write, and then I
Okay, so you don't have to put on a suit and tie and call someone boss.
No.
Oh, that's
I don't have
you,
to,
then.
and I couldn't even if I wanted to. It just doesn't go with me. So
that really, that's not your cup of tea.
I'm not hierarchical by any definition.
Okay, this is something I try and get across to the young people that I work with, that we have to choose sometimes different language when we're in different groups, in a professional setting, in a home setting, in your informal setting, and some of them are just very real and they are just themselves all the time, which can be obnoxious, can be angry, but life has made them angry, and you've almost got to try and get them to fake it, unfortunately, because if you go to a job interview and you write your CV, everyone's exaggerated their hobbies. I don't know what you know, whether it's classical music or whatever it might be. We try and show a certain side of us, and maybe that doesn't suit you because you're just a very honest person. What you see is what you get.
Exactly. I don't I don't want to lead and I don't want to follow either. I'm right
Mm.
there in the middle, right there. And
Well, Bill Fence is asking, do we not need leaders? Someone's got to be in charge, hasn't it?
well, I think there's definitely a trend towards decentralization now, right? So like with AI, you have the governments and the mega corporations are like they're hoarding AI for themselves. But then on the other hand, you have like Ben Grutzel, this AI guy who works for Hanson Robotics, who's like decentralized. He's creating a platform. He's created a platform for the decentralization of AI, so no one owns it. And then maybe also like Bitcoin, Bitcoin cryptocurrency, you have like the virtualization of money and the steering it away from central banks and governments. That there might be the future might be much more decentralized than it is now, and like I think that might be a good thing.
All right, Seb. We're going to wrap it up.
Okay.
I've got comments from Munda Skeptical saying, personally, I think a sufficiently educated population can rule themselves, but we've never been close to that, in my opinion. Well, we're getting ever closer to it. We're all getting more intelligent. Where are we going next time? What's the next step? Hopefully we'll get your friend on that wanted to talk to us. The more the merrier. And thank you to everyone who's been in the chat. Share this, and if you ever want to join in, or you've got someone who's got a question for Seb, or you've got another theory on anything in life, we love to hear from you.
All right. Thanks for having me on the show once again.
Wonderful.
And
well done.
We'll talk soon. All right. Take care.
Nice one, my brother. See you, Seb.
Bye-bye.
This has been Lessons for Life, and we were here. We're gone. Latest.